Minnesota Vikings fans, I don't know about you, but it feels like we are playing a dangerous game of chicken with our defensive secondary depth. Bleacher Report analyst Mo Moton is stirring the pot, floating a trade proposal that would send a 2027 draft pick to the Kansas City Chiefs in exchange for cornerback Kristian Fulton. This is fascinating because it highlights the ongoing debate over whether our current unit is elite or just one injury away from disaster. The sheer necessity of elite coverage in a Brian Flores scheme makes this potential move a high-stakes conversation. And honestly, the more details come out, the harder it is to ignore what is going on behind the scenes. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop your name and city in the comments below. Let's get into it. Bleacher Report is casting a shadow over our cornerback room, suggesting the Minnesota Vikings need more reinforcements despite the presence of Byron Murphy Jr. as a cornerstone of our secondary. Murphy has proven to be a force for us, but analyst Mo Moton believes the depth behind him is questionable, specifically pointing to Isaiah Rodgers and James Pierre as players with unproven track records in major roles. Rodgers held his own during a 2025 campaign that saw him allow an 88.2 passer rating, while Pierre remains a largely untested commodity with only 13 career starts. Moton suggests we should pursue a trade for Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Kristian Fulton, sending a late 2027 pick to secure the veteran. Fulton, who allowed an 81.7 passer rating in limited action last season, is seen as potential insurance for the perimeter when Murphy slides into the slot. And the more I look at this, the clear tension becomes how much trust we actually place in Brian Flores and his complex defensive scheme. Flores relies on constant, aggressive changes in coverage to keep quarterbacks guessing, a system that demands absolute reliability from every defensive back on the field. As Minnesota Vikings fans, we naturally worry about being proactive before the season slips away. We are torn between appreciating the growth of our current roster and the nagging fear that one injury could derail everything. If we really are just one piece away from true defensive dominance, is the front office willing to sacrifice future assets for a temporary veteran fix? Or are we putting too much faith in an unproven secondary to carry the load against the league's top offenses? The answer to that question might reveal exactly how Nolan Teasley and our front office view our legitimate window to contend for a title this year. Bleacher Report suggests the Minnesota Vikings should ship a late 2027 draft pick to the Kansas City Chiefs for cornerback Kristian Fulton to bolster our secondary depth. The urgency behind this proposal stems from a clear lack of proven experience behind our starter Byron Murphy Jr. While Isaiah Rodgers allowed an 88.2 passer rating in coverage last year and James Pierre brings fresh momentum from his best professional season, the front office surely knows that defensive coordinator Brian Flores operates a scheme that demands absolute reliability across all three cornerback spots. Here is where it gets interesting as we examine the history of this roster. In years past, we have seen how quickly a thin secondary can unravel when injuries occur mid-season. By acquiring a veteran with 53 career starts like Fulton, who allowed an 81.7 passer rating in his limited time last season, the team would be acting with the kind of foresight that avoids scrambling for replacements during the final stretch of the schedule. Behind closed doors, general manager Nolan Teasley and the coaching staff are likely weighing the trade-off between developing younger talent and ensuring we have a hardened veteran ready to handle complex post-snap disguises. Flores relies on his cornerbacks to keep their eyes on the prize while he dials up pressure from unconventional alignments, a task that requires mental fortitude and high-level instincts. While some fans might argue that our current trio is sufficient, the front office understands that being proactive is the hallmark of a championship-caliber organization. Adding a player who has already navigated the rigors of an NFL season provides the insurance policy necessary to sustain our defensive intensity throughout a grueling campaign. We need to maintain our competitive edge, and exploring this specific trade ensures that we are not caught off guard if the injury bug decides to strike our perimeter group. Securing the secondary is the current puzzle facing Nolan Teasley, and how he addresses it could very well dictate the ceiling for this defensive unit. The stakes are clear because Brian Flores demands perfection in his complex aggressive coverage schemes, and any breakdown in personnel can unravel those carefully constructed plans on any given Sunday. Here's the thing nobody wants to say, but Bleacher Report makes a fair point regarding the depth behind Byron Murphy Jr. While Isaiah Rodgers and James Pierre showed promise during the 2025 campaign, relying on limited starting experience creates a precarious situation if injuries strike. Trading a late 2027 draft pick for Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Kristian Fulton provides that necessary veteran insurance policy without mortgaging our future. With 53 career starts, Fulton brings a reliable presence that allows Murphy to excel in his natural slot role, while the perimeter remains secure. This proactive move directly impacts our defensive stability against high-powered passing attacks we will see throughout the upcoming schedule. If we fail to shore up this perimeter, we risk being exploited by division rivals who look to capitalize on any perceived lack of depth in the secondary. Adding a player like Fulton gives us a buffer, ensuring our playoff push is not derailed by a sudden personnel shortage in the backfield. Maintaining this level of preparation is how we stay competitive in a brutal league. While the current trio of Murphy, Rodgers, and Pierre provides a foundation, bringing in a proven commodity like Fulton is simply smart business. It is about building a roster that can withstand the inevitable wear and tear of a long season, ultimately giving us the consistent coverage looks required to keep opposing quarterbacks guessing. If we want to secure our standing, building deep, veteran-led units remains the most effective path forward for this franchise. Bleacher Report has sparked a heated conversation regarding our secondary, specifically noting that Minnesota should look to add veteran insurance for the boundary. The outlet suggests a trade for Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Kristian Fulton for a late 2027 pick, arguing that while Byron Murphy Jr. is a force, the rest of the group remains questionable. Isaiah Rodgers held opponents to an 88.2 passer rating in 2025, while James Pierre lacks significant starting experience. Adding a veteran with 53 career starts like Fulton could provide necessary stability for our complex defensive schemes. And here's why that's a big deal. Brian Flores thrives on changing coverage looks post-snap, and having a deep rotation ensures we are proactive rather than reactive when injuries strike. The counter-argument is just as compelling, however. We have already seen Isaiah Rodgers and James Pierre show real growth as both players are coming off career-best performances. Betting on their continued development might be more cost-effective than trading away future draft capital for a player who, despite his experience, only appeared in 8 games last year. The way I see it, while Bleacher Report makes a fair point about depth, the urgency for this specific trade feels slightly overblown. We have a solid foundation with Murphy, Rodgers, and Pierre, and I believe our internal coaching staff can maximize their talents without needing to scour the league for external help. While having veteran options like Fulton on the roster is never a bad problem to have, giving up future picks for a rotation player at this stage of the offseason is a luxury we may not actually need. It is important to remember that depth is essential, but we should remain confident in the guys who have already earned their spots on the field this year. Bleacher Report suggests our front office should consider acquiring Kristian Fulton from the Kansas City Chiefs for a late 2027 draft pick, a move that highlights the complex puzzle facing our defensive coordinator. This is where it gets real, as we must decide if our current roster depth is sufficient for the challenges ahead. While Byron Murphy Jr. remains a force, relying on Isaiah Rodgers and James Pierre for major roles carries inherent risk. Rodgers provided a solid 88.2 passer rating allowed last year, and Pierre is coming off a career-best season. Yet depth remains the backbone of a championship-caliber team. If we want to maintain the intricate post-snap coverage schemes that define our defensive philosophy, being proactive rather than reactive is the right path for GM Nolan Teasley to follow. Adding an experienced veteran like Fulton, who posted an 81.7 passer rating allowed over 8 games last year, would offer stability for those crucial nickel packages. As Minnesota Vikings fans, we should feel confident in the direction our leadership is taking us, knowing they are constantly exploring ways to solidify our secondary against the league's best. The long-term vision requires us to have reliable options ready before a crisis occurs, rather than scrambling when injuries inevitably hit our starting lineup. Having depth is never a problem to add, and it ensures we stay competitive regardless of who is on the field. Given the choice between relying solely on our current trio of Murphy, Rodgers, and Pierre, or trading a late 2027 pick for the proven veteran experience of Christian Fulton, which path would you prefer our team take? If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Skol! I'll see you in the next one.